It is the middle of the 18th century, and the sun is setting over the largest city on Earth. Not London, not Paris, neither of them comes close. This is Edo, the city that will one day be called Tokyo, a sea of wooden houses and dark tiled roofs spreading from the bay to the hills, cut by rivers and canals, crowded with more than 1 million people, and nearly all of them tonight will be asleep within 2 hours of dark. This is a story about one night in that city. No battles, no intrigue in the castle, just Edo itself after sundown, the temple bells that tell the hours, the watchmen who walk the lanes with wooden clappers, the noodle sellers' lanterns swaying through the dark, and 1 million people breathing quietly behind paper doors. If stories like this help you drift off, a quiet click on subscribe helps me make more of them, and that's the last thing I'll ask of you tonight. Now take off your sandals, step up onto the tatami, and let the city grow dark around us. Listen. From somewhere across the rooftops comes the sound this whole night will be built on. A temple bell. Not a clanging, hurrying European bell. Nothing in this city hurries but a single deep bronze note, struck once, left to bloom and fade for the better part of a minute, then struck again. 6 times in all, slow as breathing. The bell of the 6th hour of evening. The day is officially over. All across the city, 100,000 shutters slide home in their grooves, soft as a long exhale. The great gates of the neighborhood swing closed. Lanterns bloom one by one in the blue dusk, like the first stars coming out below the real ones. By the time the dawn bell sounds, you will know this city the way its own people know it by ear, in the dark, hour by hour. There is no hurry. The bells will keep the time for us. Before full dark, come up to high ground and look at what is falling asleep beneath us. Edo in this century is, by most reckonings, the most populous city in the world, over 1 million souls, perhaps closer to 1.25 million, more than double London. And yet from up here it hardly looks like a city at all by European lights. There are no stone towers, no brick terraces, no spires. Instead, a vast, low, grey and brown sea of wooden buildings, 1 and 2 stories, roofs of dark tile and cedar shingle flowing over the land like water, following the curl of rivers and the rise of hills, all the way to the edge of sight. At the center of the sea, an island of green and stone, the castle of the shogun, the military ruler of all Japan, ringed by moats that spiral outward through the city like the whirl of a shell. Around the castle spread the estates of the daimyo, the provincial lords, several hundred of them, required by law to keep grand residences here. Their compounds are walled, gated, planted with pines and quiet. And then there is everyone else's. Edo, the low city, the shitamachi, down on the flatland by the river. Here live the merchants, the craftsmen, the laborers, the fishmongers, the carpenters, packed with cheerful density into neighborhoods threaded by lanes barely wide enough for 2 people to pass. In the low city a family may live, and live decently, in 2 rooms. A single lane may hold 100 households, and everyone knows everyone, because the walls are wood and paper, and nobody's business stays their own for long. A million people and almost no wheels. Listen, no carriage traffic, no iron rims on cobbles, none of the roar that fills London or Paris at this hour. Goods move on men's shoulders, on carrying poles, on the backs of pack horses, on the slow flat boats of the canals. The loudest thing in Edo on an ordinary evening is human voices, and below them the knock of wooden sandals on packed earth, that endless gentle hollow clop-clop that is the true background music of the city. Smell the evening, wood smoke from 10,000 small cooking fires, all being banked now for the night. Grilled fish, soy and miso, the green smell of the rice paddies at the city's edge, and under everything the tidal breath of the bay salt. mud, seaweed. For Edo is a city of the water, laced with canals, and the tide moves through it twice a day like slow breathing. The light is nearly gone now. In the daimyo estates, the pine trees have gone black against the sky. Down in the low city, the lanes are filling with a soft orange glow, paper lanterns being lit at doorway after doorway, and the first stars are out over the bay. Come down from the hill before the neighborhood gates close. The city is putting itself to bed, and there is a great deal to see on the way. You will need to learn to hear the hours, so let me explain the clock this city keeps, because it is one of the calmest inventions of the human mind. Edo does not count time the way Europe does. In Europe, an hour is an hour, fixed and mechanical, 60 minutes by the clockwork, whether the sun agrees or not. Here, it is the day and the night themselves that are divided, daylight into 6 hours, darkness into 6 hours, and so the hours breathe with the seasons. A daytime hour in midsummer is long and lazy, stretching past 2 of our modern hours. A winter daytime hour is short and brisk. Nighttime hours do the opposite, long in winter, short and mild on a night like tonight. Nobody carries a watch. A few great houses own Japanese clocks, wadoke, beautiful brass machines built by craftsmen who took the fixed-hour clockwork of Europe and patiently re-engineered it to tell these breathing seasonal hours instead, with weights that are adjusted as the seasons turn. But the city itself does not need them. The city has the bells. The time bells of Edo hang in wooden towers and temple yards across the city. The great bell at Nihonbashi, the bells of Ueno and Asakusa, and others, each with its keeper, each rung in relay so that the hours roll outward across the rooftops from bell to bell, neighborhood to neighborhood, like ripples crossing a pond. First, 3 quick preparatory strikes. Pay attention. The hour is coming, and then the count itself, in strokes so slow and full that each one has died away to almost nothing before the next is struck. And here is a detail to fall asleep on. The hours of Edo are not numbered 1, 2, 3, but named for the old zodiac animals: the hour of the dog, the hour of the boar, the hour of the rat, the hour of the ox, the animals walking through the night in their ancient order, as they have for centuries. Midnight belongs to the rat. The deepest, stillest stretch of night belongs to the ox, and the hour before dawn belongs to the tiger. The bell-keepers are careful men. They time the night by the stars, by water clocks and incense clocks, sticks of incense of standard length that burn at a known patient rate, so that time in a bell tower literally goes up in fragrant smoke, hour by hour. The keeper watches the coal creep down the incense stick, and when it reaches the mark, he climbs to his bell and swings the great wooden beam and sends the hour rolling out over 1,000,000 sleepers. No ticking, no chimes hammering out quarter hours, just a few times in a night, that single bronze note, blooming and fading, telling anyone who happens to be awake, this is the hour, all is in order, sleep on. We are in the hour of the dog now, the first full hour of night. The lanes are emptying, the last shutters are sliding home. Walk with me down into the low city, quickly, before the gates. A city of 1,000,000 people cannot simply drift off. It must be shut down, deliberately, piece by piece, every single night. And watching Edo close itself is like watching a great ship rigged for the night watch. Every block of the low city, every cho, every neighborhood of a few hundred souls is enclosed. At the end of each lane stands a wooden gate, the kido, with a little gatehouse beside it, and at the hour of the boar, as the night deepens, these gates swing shut all over the city, thousands of them. From above it would look like nothing at all. From within, the whole vast city quietly separates into 1,000 small walled villages, each snug behind its own gate, each answerable for its own people. The gatekeeper is usually an older man, half watchman and half institution, who lives in the gatehouse with a brazier, a lantern, and complete knowledge of every face in the neighborhood. After the gate closes, latecomers must knock and be recognized. A resident coming home from an errand is passed through with a nod and perhaps a mild remark about the hour. A stranger is questioned politely, but questioned. It is not tyranny, it is housekeeping. In a city built entirely of wood and paper, where a single careless flame can eat a whole district before midnight, everyone understands why the night must be kept in order. The shops have already gone to sleep. Edo's shopfronts are open all day, whole walls slid away, goods and shopkeeper and customers all mingled together in the open air, so closing is a real transformation. The sliding of heavy wooden storm shutters, panel after panel, groove by groove, until the cheerful open shop is a blank wooden wall. Up and down every commercial street, this soft, heavy sliding sound repeats 1,000 times at dusk, the sound of a city folding its wings. Inside the merchant houses, the day's last ritual. The shop boys count the till by lamplight. The clerk writes the day's ledger with brush and ink, swift, beautiful strokes he learned as a child, and the master of the house makes his round, checking that every fire is banked, every brazier safe, every candle out where a candle is not needed. Fire again, always fire, the rule of every Edo household, spoken to children like a prayer. Before sleep, know where your flames are. And in the kitchen, the mistress of the house banks the cooking fire in its clay stove, raking the coals together, burying them in ash to sleep until morning, for a live coal in the ash at dawn saves the trouble of striking a new fire. And fire, once you have it, is a thing you keep, like a small domestic animal, warm and dangerous and never quite tame. The bell of the boar hour rolls across the roofs. The gates are shut now all over the city, and from far down the lane comes a new sound, two clear knocks of wood on wood, unhurried, echoing off the shuttered fronts. The night watch has begun his first round. Follow that knocking sound, because the man making it is the most important person awake in this whole city. He is the fire watchman, and he walks his neighborhood the way the boatswain's mate walks a ship's deck at sea slowly, on a fixed round all night. In his hands he carries two hardwood clappers, the hyoshigi joined by a cord, and every few dozen paces he swings them together, clack, clack. The sound is sharp, but not alarming. The ear learns within one night to hear it as reassurance, and as he walks he calls in a long, drawn-out, almost musical cry that every person in Japan knows: "Hai no yojin, mind your fires, take care with fire. Clack, clack, mind your fires." Down every lane in the city, all night, in every weather, children fall asleep to it. Old people wake, hear it, and are comforted back to sleep by it. It is the heartbeat of the Edo night. The fear underneath it is entirely rational. Edo is the most flammable great city that has ever existed. 1 million people living in wood, paper, straw matting and thatch, packed wall to wall, cooking and lighting and warming themselves with open flame. The city burns, and burns often. Everyone walking these lanes tonight has seen fire in their lifetime. The elders have seen great fires, whole districts gone between sunset and sunrise. The city has learned painfully over generations, and its answer is everywhere around you in the dark. Look up. Against the stars, at intervals across the rooftops, stand the fire towers, Hinomiyagura. Tall, skeletal wooden lookouts, each with a ladder, a platform, and a bell or drum of its own. On the platforms, watchers lean on the rails through the night, reading the darkness for the one kind of light that must never be allowed to bloom unwatched. From a tower, a trained eye can tell a lantern from a cook fire, from the first raw flicker of a house alight, and can tell, by that flicker, exactly which block is in trouble. If flame is seen, the tower bell speaks, and here the city's genius shows itself, because the bell speaks in code. A slow, single striking, fire, but far away, be aware. A doubled, quicker striking, fire in the neighborhood, brigades, move. A continuous, urgent hammering. It is here, it is close. Up, everyone, now. 1,000,000 people know this code the way they know their own names. On most nights on this night, the towers stay silent, and the silence of the fire bells is the sweetest sound in Edo, the sound of nothing happening. And the brigades that would answer, the firemen of Edo, the Haikishi, are the city's great celebrities, ladder men and roof men, organized in numbered companies, each with its banner and its standard bearer, famous for courage and for magnificent tattoos, adored by children, romanticized by everyone. Their method, in a wooden city, is not to pour water, there is no engine that could matter, but to pull down houses ahead of the flames, opening gaps the fire cannot cross. They fight fire with carpentry, with hooks and muscle, standing on roofs in the smoke. Tonight they sleep in their quarters, boots by the door, like firemen anywhere, in any century, and the city sleeps better for knowing where they are. Clack, clack, from 2 lanes over now, the sound softened by the houses in between. Mind your fires. The watchman's round takes about an hour. He will pass this spot again in the hour of the rat, and again in the ox, and again in the tiger, all night, as his father did, as his son will, walk on. There is a light ahead that is allowed to burn a little swinging lantern, low over the ground, with the smell of hot broth around it. Not everyone in Edo goes to bed at the boar hour. For the late people, the watchmen, the gatekeepers, the boatmen, the young men drifting home from somewhere they will be vague about, tomorrow the city provides one of the most beloved institutions in its whole history, the night noodle seller. He comes with his whole shop on his shoulder, a wooden yoke with cabinets swinging from each end, one holding a small charcoal stove and a pot of broth kept just at the simmer, the other holding noodles, bowls, spoons, soy, and a little folding bench. On the front swings a paper lantern with the shop's name brushed on it, glowing soft orange, visible far down the dark lane. He announces himself not by shouting, but by sound. A small bamboo flute, 2 notes, high and low, plaintive and unmistakable. Every citizen of Edo, hearing those 2 notes float over the rooftops at midnight, feels the same thing you feel now, sudden, unreasonable hunger. His trade is buckwheat noodles, soba, served scalding hot in dark broth, a ladle of it poured steaming over the bowl, a scatter of spring onion, perhaps a slice of fish cake for the extravagant. It is cheap, 16 coppers the bowl, the price fixed so firmly by custom that one style of noodles is simply named after the number. 16 coppers buys a workman standing in the dark a full belly, a warmed body, and 5 minutes of philosophy with the seller, who, like night food vendors in every city in every age, is half cook and half counselor, hears everything, repeats nothing, and has seen every kind of person this city can produce come out of the dark into his little circle of lantern light. Stand here a moment in that circle. The stove ticks softly. The broth breathes steam into the night air. Down the lane, utter darkness and sleeping houses. Out on the river, a single boat lantern slides by. Overhead, the great summer stars. A watchman off his round sits on the little bench, blowing on his noodles, his clappers resting beside him. Nobody says much. Nobody needs to. There are hundreds of these lanterns moving through Edo tonight, noodle men and sellers of grilled eel, of sweet sake lees drink in winter, of insects in cages in summer, crickets and bell crickets sold as bedside companions for the beauty of their song. A city of 1,000,000 turns over in its sleep, and these small lights drift through it like fireflies, feeding the wakeful, marking the lanes, keeping the night gentle company. The seller banks his little stove and shoulders his yoke. The 2 flute notes drift away down the lane. Somewhere behind us, the bathhouse is raking out its fires, and that is worth seeing too. Come, every neighborhood in Edo has one, and it is the true parliament of the low city, the public bathhouse, the sento. Almost nobody in the low city has a bath at home. A private bath means a private fire, and fires are dangerous and fuel is money. So everyone goes to the bathhouse, and by everyone I mean everyone. Carpenters and clerks, grandmothers and babies, the rich merchant and the man who carries his palanquin. For a few coppers each, they have all soaked, this evening, in water hot enough to make a foreigner yelp. Edo people take their baths ferociously hot and their evenings gentle, and they have caught up, while soaking, on the entire day's news of the neighborhood. Who is marrying, who is quarreling, whose daughter has a new position, what the fishmonger really said to the landlord. By this hour, the bathers are long gone. Inside, the bathmaster and his family are at the night's last labor, scrubbing the tubs, sluicing the floors, and above all, putting the great furnace to bed. The bathhouse fire is the biggest domestic flame in any neighborhood. It has heated tons of water since before dawn, and it dies the way all fires in this city die, deliberately, watched, raked apart, damped, buried in ash, checked and checked again. The bathmaster's last round of the furnace room is as solemn as the gatekeeper's inspection of his gate. Then the shutters slide home, and the bathhouse too sleeps. The bathers it sent home are the reason this city smells clean at night, and the old people would tell you half the reason it sleeps so well. There may be no better preparation for sleep ever devised than Edo's evening. Hard work, a ferociously hot soak, a light supper, a lane full of neighbors saying good night, and a futon waiting on the tatami, which is where we are going now, through a doorway hung with a split curtain into one of the long row houses, to see how 1,000,000 people actually lie down. This is a nagaya, a long house, and most of Edo's ordinary people live in one, a single wooden building running back from the lane, divided into small dwellings wall to wall, each home to a family. The lane it faces is the family's parlor, the well at its end, the family's kitchen tap. The whole row, a single organism of neighbors who share water, gossip, festivals, quarrels, and the unshakable Edo conviction that privacy is a poor substitute for company. Step inside, sandals off at the earthen entry, up one step onto the wooden floor and onto the tatami. Straw matting, firm and faintly springy underfoot, smelling of dried grass and summers past. The whole dwelling is perhaps 2 rooms. By day, with the futon put away and the low table out, it is a dining room, a workshop, a nursery, whatever the hour requires. Rooms in Edo do not have fixed purposes, they have hours. And now, at night, the room performs its last transformation. The futon comes out of the deep cupboard where it spent the day, thick quilted mattress laid directly on the tatami, quilted coverlet over it, a pillow filled with buckwheat husks that rustle softly and stay cool against the cheek. In the corner burns the room's one small light, an andon, a paper lantern box on a wooden frame, a saucer of oil and a wick behind paper panels, giving a light so soft it barely reaches the walls, a glow rather than a light, just enough to keep a sleeping room from being a dark one. Because it is early summer, the mosquito net goes up, a great cube of green hemp gauze hung from hooks at the room's 4 corners, the futon inside it. And this net, mundane as it is one of the tenderest objects in Japanese life. Generations of poems have been written about the world seen through it. The andon's glow made softer still, the summer moon diffused to a pale bloom, parents' faces leaning in to check on children, everything inside the net safe, everything outside it far away. Children raised inside a mosquito net remember it all their lives, the way other children remember a treehouse. The family lies down together, parents, children, grandmother by the wall, everyone within arm's reach, as nearly everyone in this city sleeps. Through the wooden wall, thin as it is, come the small sounds of the neighbors settling too. A cough, a child resettled, a murmur. To an Edo person, these sounds through the wall are not a nuisance. They are the sound of not being alone in the world. The row house at night breathes together, like the berth deck of a ship. The andon's wick is trimmed low. Outside, wooden sandals pass the watchman again, clack, clack, faint now, and fainter. Mind your fires. Inside the green gauze, the children are already gone, and the grandmother's breathing has gone long and slow. The bell of the rat hour rolls over the roofs. Midnight. Half the night still lies ahead of us, and it belongs to the quietest hours this city knows. Come back out into the lane quietly and see what the city looks like when it is fully, deeply asleep. The moon is up now over the rooftops, a few days past full, bright enough to lay pale stripes down every lane and throw the shadows of eaves sharp across the packed earth. Edo by moonlight is one of the sights of the world, though almost nobody is awake to see it. 1,000 streets of silver wood and black shadow, utterly still, the whole city like a woodblock print of itself. Here and there a gatehouse lantern burns orange against the blue-silver night. Down the long straight avenues you can see half a mile, and nothing moves in all of it but the moon on the tiles. The sounds of the rat hour are small and distinct, each one arriving alone out of the silence, like a single brushstroke on white paper. A dog somewhere by the fish market, answered lazily by another across the river. The knock of a boat against a canal post as the tide shifts it. Wind moving the leaves of a persimmon tree over a garden wall. The 2 flute notes of a distant noodle man, a lane too far away to tempt anyone. And underneath everything, so constant you must remember to hear it, the low breathing of the sea at the city's edge. The watchmen own these streets now. At the corner, 2 of them meet the gatekeeper of one block and the fire watchman of the next, and hold the kind of conversation such men have held on night corners in every city that has ever existed. Quiet, unhurried, mostly pauses. The weather, the tide, a lantern seen where no lantern should be, investigated, found to be a widow sitting up with a sick child. Her fire checked for her, kindly, and the matter closed. Nothing else to report, nothing else is the whole profession, and both men are proud of it. Above them the fire tower stands against the moon, its watcher a small dark shape leaning on the rail. He has counted the bells since dusk. He will count them till dawn. From his platform the sleeping city spreads out silver to every horizon. 1 million people in his care, and not one point of unexplained light in all of it. All's well, a sailor would say. The Edo watchman only strikes his clappers, twice, softly, and walks on. It means the same thing. From the top of any fire tower tonight, a watcher looking northeast would see, far off across the dark paddies beyond the city's edge, a faint dome of light on the horizon, as if one small neighborhood out there had refused the night entirely. That glow is the Yoshiwara, the licensed pleasure quarter, a walled district out beyond the temple of Asakusa, deliberately placed far from the city's heart, where the shogunate confines the world of banquets, music and courtesans, and where the lanterns burn all night by special dispensation while the rest of the millions sleep in the dark. We will not go in tonight. It is a long walk, and ours is a sleeping tour, and that district's stories are told loudly enough elsewhere. But it belongs in the night's picture because it is part of how this city dreams. For the price of the boat ride, a clerk who will spend his whole life in a 2-room row house can drift up the river to a floating world that is truly what they call it, the floating world, ukiyo of silk and lamplight and music. Look at it, sigh over it, and drift home again. Most of Edo knows the quarter mainly through pictures, the cheap, gorgeous woodblock prints of famous beauties that sell in the city's shops the way portraits of actors do, art for the price of a bowl of noodles, pinned to the walls of 1,000 ordinary rooms. From here tonight, the floating world is only that, a soft glow on the horizon, a rumor of music too far away to hear, samisen strings and laughter dissolved by 2 miles of night air into something quieter than the crickets. The moon is brighter. The watchman's clappers 2 lanes over are louder. The city sleeps on its side of the dark paddies, and the lanterns burn on theirs, and the river runs between, carrying a last slow boat upstream with its own small lamp, like a spark going home to a fire. Let the glow sink behind us. Our road bends toward something older and quieter, the temple district, where the great bells live. The temple precincts at night are the deepest quiet in Edo, quiet with a floor of stone and a roof of cedar trees. By day, these courtyards roar like fairs. Pilgrims, peddlers, tea stalls, children, fortune papers tied fluttering to every branch. Now the great gate stands open on emptiness, a courtyard of moonlit gravel raked into long, patient lines, the 5-storied pagoda, a black silhouette against the stars, stone lanterns holding small flames along the path, and the vast main hall breathing incense out into the dark, a smell that has soaked into its timbers for 100 years. Sandalwood, smoke, old wood, old prayers. A city of 1 million sleeps around thousands of temples and shrines, from great halls like this down to shrine corners the size of a cupboard, tucked between row houses. The fox shrine at the end of the lane with its 2 stone foxes in red bibs, the ancient gnarled tree with its sacred rope, honored and left standing while the city grew around it. Faith in Edo is not an appointment kept once a week. It is woven into the streets themselves. A lamp here, an offering there, a clap and a bow on the way to work. At night, all of it keeps watch in the dark, unbothered inside the great hall. A single lamp burns before the altar, gilded shapes gleaming faintly in its glow. A young monk on night duty pads across the wooden floor, unhurried. He will tend the lamp and later, near dawn, join the others when the hall fills with the low rolling thunder of sutra chanting, but that is hours away. For now, his footsteps on the old boards are the only sound, and each board answers him with a different soft note, like a very slow instrument. And here, in its own roofed frame beside the courtyard, hangs the reason we came, the great bell, taller than a man, bronze, green dark with age, thick as a fortress wall at the lip, its surface stippled with rows of knobs and cast with the names of the parishioners whose donations poured it. Beside it, drawn back on ropes, the striker, a whole-polished tree trunk, slung horizontally, swung by the bell monk against the bronze at the appointed hours. Stand close to it, even silent, a great bell is a presence, a held breath of metal. When the hour of the ox arrives, in a little while, the monk will come sleepy up the steps, haul back the beam and let it swing, and the note that blooms out of this bronze will roll across the rooftops for a full minute, out over the canals and the moored boats and the mosquito nets and the million sleepers, softening with every roof it crosses, arriving in the row house we visited as hardly more than a pressure in the air, and the grandmother without waking will hear it and know the hour and settle deeper. They say, the bell monks themselves say, that the sound of a temple bell is the voice of impermanence. Every note is born, blooms, fades, and is gone. And that is the whole sermon. All things pass, says the bell, once an hour, all night, very gently, to a city too asleep to hear it, and comforted all the same. The ox hour is close now. Let us be out under the sky when the bell speaks. Between the temple district and the sleeping city runs the Sumida, the great river of Edo, and at this hour it is the most beautiful road in Japan, and almost nobody is on it. By day, the river is a highway, jostling with ferries, fish boats, timber rafts, pleasure barges, and the endless traffic of a city that moves by water. Now it is a sheet of black silk carrying the moon. The tide is making the river runs backward, sea smell moving upstream, and the moored boats along both banks swing slowly to face it, all together, like cattle turning in a field. Walk out onto the great bridge and stand at the middle. 200 paces of arched wooden roadway, high enough for masts to pass beneath by day, one of the crowded wonders of the city, with its view of Mount Fuji on the far horizon at sunset. At this hour you have it entirely to yourself, except for one other figure at the far rail, a watchman posted to the bridge, whose whole night duty is this view, and who has long since stopped pretending it is a hardship. Look down the river. A single lantern moves on the water, a night ferryman, sculling someone home late from up-country, his oar creaking in its rope with each slow stroke, the sound carrying flat across the water for half a mile. The wake he draws is a line of moonlight that heals itself behind him. Along the banks the moored boats knock and mutter against their posts. Under the bridge the tide chuckles quietly around the great wooden piers, each pier wearing its skirt of ripples. On the far bank in the boat quarter, the boatmen's families are asleep aboard and ashore. A boat at its mooring is a cradle. Boat children are famous for sleeping anywhere all their lives, having learned the skill in the best school there is. Here and there among the moored hulls a tiny brazier glows where a night fisherman tends his lines, patient as a heron. The cormorant men are out too, far upstream, their pine torch fires making small red trembles on the black water. And along both banks, back from the water, stand the long white walls of the rice warehouses, where the wealth of the whole country sleeps in bales. Rice is money here, salaries are paid in it, and these moonlit warehouses are the city's treasury. Watchmen walk their lengths all night. Even the cats that walk the warehouse roofs are, in a manner of speaking, on salary. Fireflies drift along the reedy margins under the bank, blinking their slow, cold sparks. Early summer is their season, and children caught jars of them at dusk to hang by their pillows as living lanterns, which is the sort of thing this city does instead of hurrying. The bell of the ox hour begins across the water, the great bronze note we stood beside, arriving here softened by the river air, one stroke and the long fade, and another. The deepest hour of the night has begun. The ferryman's lantern slides under the bridge and away. Time to talk very quietly about the hour of the ox itself, because the people of this city will tell you it is not an hour like the others. Every land has a deep hour, and in Japan it is this one, the heart of the ox, the third quarter of the hour of the ox, the dead center of the night. If you ask anyone in this city, from the shogun scholars to the noodle man, they will tell you plainly, this is the hour when the other world leans closest to this one. Edo is the most story-loving city on earth, and its favorite stories on summer nights are ghost stories told deliberately in hot weather, because a good shiver cools you better than a fan. Whole parlor games are built on it, 100 candles lit, 100 tales told in turn, one candle blown out per tale, the room growing slowly darker toward the 100th story, and whatever it might summon. Prints of elegant ghosts sell as briskly as prints of actors. This is a city on easy, familiar, almost neighborly terms with its spirits, and its night world is marvelously populated, not with brimstone terrors, but with a vast, strange, oddly domestic census of beings. The fox, who can take human shape and passes brilliant exams and marries into good families, and is found out always by some small slip a tail glimpsed in lamplight, a fondness for fried tofu. The tanuki, the raccoon dog, shapeshifter and prankster, who drums on his belly in the moonlight for pure joy and turns leaves into money to buy sake. The household objects, this is the detail to love, that after 100 years of service wake up, the umbrella with one eye and one leg, who hops through the lanes on rainy nights, the paper lantern with a face, the old sandal, the kettle. A city that mends and keeps its things for generations came to believe half seriously that things so long loved must eventually have souls, and dreamed up a midnight parade of them, the night procession of 100 spirits, tottering cheerfully through the sleeping streets and gone by dawn. Nobody bars the door against these. The people asleep behind the paper walls around us grew up on every one of them, told by grandmothers inside mosquito nets in exactly the voice I am using now. A fox may be trotting along the top of the neighborhood wall at this moment, trim and moon-silvered. Entirely real, the city has thousands, and whether it is only a fox is precisely the kind of question an Edo grandmother would answer with a smile and no other comment. What the deep hour asks of the living is only respect. It is the hour for sleeping, not walking, and the few whose duty keeps them out, the watchmen, the bell monks, the bridge keeper, carry their lanterns a little closer at the heart of the ox, and are not ashamed of it, and strike their clappers perhaps a shade more firmly. Wood on wood, human and warm, a sound every spirit in Japan is said to respectfully avoid. Clack, clack. Mind your fires, sleep on. The parade, if it passes tonight, will pass quietly. Because the watchman's cry has kept us company all night. You should know, told calmly, at a safe distance of years, the way the old people of this city themselves tell it what it is he stands against. Nearly a century before tonight, in the reign of the fourth shogun, Edo burned as no city has ever burned. It was the end of winter, after a long drought, with a hard wind off the mountains. A fire began in a temple district in the afternoon. The wind took it, and for 2 days the fire owned the city. It leapt the canals, it leapt the river, it burned the great bridge and the castle keep itself, the mightiest tower in Japan, gone in an evening. When the wind finally dropped and the snow came, most of the city was ash, and the dead were beyond exact counting, 100,000 souls, the chroniclers say. The city the fire found was a medieval city that had grown like a thicket. The city that rose from its ash, the city sleeping around us tonight, was something new, rebuilt deliberately, with the fire in mind. Streets widened into fire breaks. Whole districts of temples and estates moved across the river to open ground. The bridges multiplied so no crowd could ever again be trapped against the water. Riverside embankments cleared and kept clear the pleasant moonlit promenades we walked this evening are fire breaks wearing a disguise. Roofs of thatch outlawed, replaced across the generations with tile. Plastered storehouses built thick-walled and shuttered to keep a family's goods alive through anything. The fire towers raised, the brigades organized, the watchman's round instituted the very cry that has followed us all night. Hai no Yojin is the voice of that old catastrophe, worn smooth by a century of peaceful repetition, the way a terrible memory is worn smooth into a proverb. This is a thing cities do that people also do. Take the worst night in their history and turn it, slowly, patiently, into the habits that guard every night after. The Great Fire is nearly 100 years asleep. The watchman walking his round tonight has never seen anything like it, and thanks to the round itself, likely never will. His clappers knock at the dark like a heartbeat, the city's oldest scar, beating on as its pulse. And the night, which heard all this before we said it, goes on exactly as before. Moon on the tiles, tide in the canals, a million sleepers, and the towers standing their silent watch. The watchmen at their corner, somewhere past the ox hour, drift as night talk always drifts from duty to pleasure, to the festivals, because this same city that goes to bed at the boar hour also knows, a few nights a year, exactly how to stay up. The greatest of them comes at the height of summer, on the river, the night of the river opening, when the season of evening boating begins and the fireworks masters of Edo answer each other across the water. Picture the Sumida then not empty and silver as we saw it, but covered bank to bank with boats. Pleasure barges under lantern strings, tea-house boats, tiny hired skiffs, whole flotillas jostling gunwale to gunwale until you could nearly cross the river on their decks. the bridges packed shoulder to shoulder, every window, every roof, every foot of embankment, the entire city turned out at night, faces upturned. And then the sky opens. The fireworks of this age are not our sky-filling chrysanthemums. They are nearer the earth, gold and amber, fountains and falling willows, and rockets that bloom and drip fire toward their own reflections, and the crowd greets each one by shouting the names of the rival pyrotechnic houses, urging them on like wrestlers. Tamaya, Kaguya, 100,000 voices, the river blazing with lantern light, the drum of the great fireworks echoing off the warehouses, the loudest, brightest, most gloriously awake this sleeping city ever becomes. There are gentler festival nights too, scattered through the calendar like lanterns down a lane. Nights when the whole city climbs its hills to watch the harvest moon rise, with offerings of dumplings and pampas grass set out on verandas moon viewing, a festival whose entire program is looking up. The July nights of the dead, when families hang lanterns to guide their ancestors home for a visit, and the last evening sends them off again with tiny lantern boats set drifting down the river, thousands of small flames wobbling seaward in the dark, each one a household's year of remembering, until the river itself looks like the Milky Way lying down. And the Star Festival, when the whole city ties wishes written on colored paper strips to fresh-cut bamboo, and the lanes rustle overhead with a week of everyone's hopes. The watchmen at their corner have seen decades of these nights. They agree, as their fathers agreed, that the fireworks get better every year and the crowds worse, that the moon was rounder when they were young, and that there is no better duty in the calendar than bridge watch on a festival night, paid to stand where the whole city is trying to squeeze in beside you. Then the corner falls quiet again, and the ordinary, extraordinary silent night resumes, and both men privately prefer it, though neither says so. We have kept to the low city all night, among the row houses and lanterns, because that is where Edo's warmth is. But lift your eyes once more to the dark green hill at the city's heart, and let us pay one quiet visit to the other Edo, the high city before dawn. The castle is less a building than a landscape, ring within ring of moats and colossal stone ramparts, gates the size of temples, and inside it all, the sprawling single-storied palace of the shogun, audience halls of 1,000 tatami mats, corridors that run like roads, gold-leafed screens sleeping in the dark. Since the Great Fire took the keep, no tower has been rebuilt. The mightiest government on earth governs from a building deliberately kept low, and there is a very Edo lesson in that. The palace at night is a city of its own, and it never entirely sleeps. Guard fires burn at the great gates, where samurai of the night watch sit in armor lacquered dark, spears racked beside them, playing quiet games of Go on boards worn smooth by generations of night watches. Inspectors make silent rounds of corridors where the floors themselves are guards' nightingale floors, built to chirp and sing under the lightest foot, so that no one, friend or assassin, crosses them unannounced. Somewhere deep in the inner palace, lamps are trimmed outside the chamber where the most powerful man in Japan sleeps no more comfortably, the low city likes to observe, than anyone else on a good futon. Around the castle spread the estates of the lords, mile after walled mile of the high city, and they are the quietest places in Edo tonight, for a curious reason. Half their masters' households are always somewhere else. Every lord in Japan lives under the alternate attendance law, a year in Edo, a year in his home province, his wife and heir remaining in Edo, always honored guests of the shogun and hostages in the same breath. So the high city is a city of magnificent half-empty houses, of homesick provincial samurai writing letters home, of gatekeepers guarding gardens their master will not see till next year. It is also, though no one planned it, the engine of everything we have walked through tonight. 200 or 300 lords, each obliged to keep a great establishment here, each arriving yearly with processions 1,000 strong. That river of stipends and salaries and appetites is what feeds the low city's shops and bathhouses and noodle stalls, what pays at several removes for the very lantern the sober man swings through the dark. The lord's pride, trickling down through a million pockets that is Edo's economy, and the low city, which understands this perfectly, regards the high city with the tolerant affection of a shopkeeper for his best and most predictable customer. The guard fires flicker at the great gates. A nightingale flaw sings briefly under some inspector's foot and falls silent. The hour of the tiger is coming, and down in the low city, which never needed nightingale flaws to know its own footsteps, the very first risers are already stirring. Sometime after the ox hour, the moon slips behind a slow bank of cloud from the bay. The air goes soft and heavy, and Edo receives one of the great free gifts of its summer nights, a passing shower. It announces itself the way night rain always does, not with drops but with a change in the sound of distance. The far-off lanes go quiet in a new way. The leaves of the persimmon trees begin a low, expectant rustle. And then you hear it coming. Literally hear the edge of the rain crossing the city toward you, roof by roof. A soft advancing hiss over the tiles. 3 streets away, then 2, then 1, and then it is here. And the whole world is one gentle sound. Rain on a city of tile and wood is an orchestra with no loud instruments. The broad main roofs give a deep, steady wash. The bamboo gutters gurgle and chuckle at their joints. Rain chains hang from the eaves of the better houses, loops of iron cup to cup, guiding the water down in a braided, trickling column that is half plumbing and half music. Under the eaves, the packed earth of the lane drinks with a whisper, and on the paper of 10,000 window screens, the fine spray lands with a sound softer than a moth, a sound you feel in the small hairs of your neck more than hear. The watchman steps under a gatehouse eave unhurried. His round can wait out a shower, and stands watching the lane's single lantern wear a halo of falling silver. The sober seller, caught between customers, tucks his cart under a bridge and listens to the rain drum politely on his lacquered boxes. Out on the river, the ferryman ships his oar, pulls a straw cape over his shoulders, the same rain cape his trade has worn for 1,000 years, and lets the tide carry him, a man in no hurry, inside a rain in no hurry. Behind the paper walls, the effect on a million sleepers is unanimous. There is a word this language keeps for exactly this, the particular comfort of listening to rain from inside a warm bed, and the whole city is wordlessly practicing it. Sleepers surface just far enough to hear the roof sing, confirm they are dry and someone loves them, and go down again deeper than before. In the row house, the grandmother wakes for a single breath rain. Good, the plum tree needed it, and is asleep before the thought finishes. 10 minutes and the shower's far edge is already crossing the castle hill, the hiss retreating roof by roof the way it came. What it leaves behind is a rinsed and dripping city, smelling of wet earth and cedar and clean stone, the smell, every poet here agrees, of the world starting over. The moon comes back out and finds every tile in Edo polished and every gutter still murmuring. The lantern by the gate steams faintly. The watchman steps back into the lane. Clack, clack, softer now on the wet air. All's well, and freshly washed besides. Listen, threading through the after-rain quiet comes one of the loneliest, gentlest sounds of the Edo night. A small 2-note whistle, high then low, quite different from the noodle man's flute. It is the anma, the blind masseur, walking his rounds, and he is one of the night's true citizens. Massage in this city is, by long custom and law, a profession reserved for the blind, one of the ways this society sets aside dignified work for those without sight, and its practitioners work late because their customers ache at bedtime, the porter's shoulders, the clerk's bent back, the old lady's knees before sleep. So the Anma walks the dark lanes with his staff and his whistle, and the whistle is his shop sign, drifting over the rooftops. Here I am if you hurt. Watch him come up the lane and understand what you are seeing. The one person in Edo to whom this darkness means nothing at all. He walks these lanes by their feel and echo, his staff reading the ground, his ears reading the walls, the gutter, the wellhead, the gatehouse, a map more reliable than moonlight. The night, which makes the sighted city careful, makes him equal. It is his working day. A shutter slides open a hand's breadth up the lane, a voice calls softly, and the masseur angles toward it without a wasted step. Inside, by the low light of the andon, he will work the knots out of a tired back with thumbs that see better than eyes, unhurried to the sound of the house breathing around him. His customers half sleep under his hands and finish the treatment more than half dreaming, being kneaded gently towards sleep at midnight by candlelight in a quiet room. There are worse endings a day can have. Paid and bowed to, he taps back down the step into the lane and walks on, whistling his 2 notes into the dark for the next aching customer. The fox on the wall watches him pass with professional respect, one night creature acknowledging another. The whistle fades toward the temple district, thin and kind, and is gone. Doctors, midwives and masseurs, the 3 trades the gates will always open for at any hour. The night has its own small economy of mercy, walking its rounds like everything else in this city, patiently, on foot, by lantern and by ear. The lanes we walk are lined with more than homes. Half the low city is workshops, and though the shutters are closed, come lean at a few and let me tell you what sleeps behind them, because Edo's nights are furnished by its days. Behind this one, smelling of fresh-cut hinoki even through the wood, a carpenter's shop. The carpenters are the aristocracy of Edo's trades in a wooden city that burns. They are never once in their lives out of work, and their tools sleep in chests more beautiful than most furniture. Planes that pull shavings you can read through, saws that cut on the draw stroke, chisels handed down like heirlooms, no nails to speak of. This city's buildings hold together by joinery, wood gripping wood in puzzles cut so true they flex through earthquakes that would crack stone. The apprentice sleeps in the loft above the wood store, as apprentices do, breathing cedar all night, years of sweeping and sharpening ahead of him before he is trusted with a beam of it. That long shop front with the faint indigo smell is a dyer's. Inside, sunk to their rims in the earthen floor, the great vats of indigo sleep under wooden lids, living vats, fermenting, tended like livestock, some of them older than the dyer himself. Half of Edo is dressed out of vats like these. The blue of workmen's coats and shop curtains and bedding covers deepen dip by dip, a blue so much the color of this city's working life that centuries later foreigners will call it Japan blue. On the drying poles of the yard behind, tonight bolts of it hang rinsed and dripping, ghost dark in the moonlight, exhaling their sharp green smell over the fence. And that small shuttered front with the swept stone step, mind your voice out of old habit, is a swordsmith's. Mostly, in this long piece, he makes kitchen knives and garden shears, and prospers by it. The wars are 5 generations gone, and nobody misses them. But the license over his door is real, and a few times a year the forge is purified. The ropes of twisted straw are hung, and something older wakes in the workshop. The folding and welding, the clay and the quenching, the steel worked by firelight in a ritual as much as a craft. The neighbors, hearing the hammer on those rare nights, feel the sound in their chests and are obscurely proud. Tonight the forge is cold, banked like every other fire in the city, and the smith sleeps like every other craftsman, flat out, honestly tired, hands loose at last. Printers, weavers, comb makers, lantern painters, mirror polishers, makers of hair oil and of abacuses, and of the little carved toggles that hang everything from an Edo sash, lane after lane of them, shuttered and dark, the whole vast toolkit of a 1,000,000-person city lying quiet in its chests and racks. A city's day, someone said, is stored overnight in its workshops, the way fire is stored in banked coals. At dawn, 10,000 shutters will slide, and the coals will all be blown alive together. But that is hours away yet, and the lanes smell of cedar shavings and indigo and rain, and nothing anywhere needs making until the light comes back. Beyond a long white wall near the hilltop, walk it slowly. It takes a while, lies the other kind of Edo garden. Not a pot of morning glories by a row house door, but a daimyo's landscape garden, acres of it. And at this hour, by prior arrangement with the moon, it is the most beautiful place in the city, with no one at all to see it. These gardens are made things, generations deep, hills built by hand to borrow the shape of famous mountains, a lake dug and shaped so that a walk around it unrolls like a scroll of celebrated views, a stone bridge from a poem, a pine trained sideways over the water for 80 years, a gravel shore raked to imitate a beach the gardener's grandfather saw once in Shinano and never forgot. By day, the Lord's guests stroll it as a kind of travel, all Japan in one walled valley. Tonight it belongs to the herons and the moon. The lake at the Oxhour is a second sky, stars floating among the lily pads. The moon laid on the black water so perfectly that the koi rising send it wobbling in slow gold rings. On the little island, the stone lantern holds one cupped flame, doubled below in the water. The oldest trick in Japanese garden craft, and it has never once failed to be worth it. Frogs speak from the reed margin in short, considered sentences. Somewhere up the dark slope, a deer scarer, the bamboo tube that fills from the stream, tips and knocks, performs its single wooden note, tock, and begins patiently refilling. The garden's own bell, counting an hour no one keeps. At the lake's edge stands the moon viewing pavilion, open on 3 sides, built for exactly the night it is having. Its floor was placed at the one height, its eave cut to the one angle, from which the autumn full moon will rise precisely over the far pine architecture, aimed like an instrument at a single yearly event. On that night, the Lord and his guests will sit here with sake cups, composing verses of studied melancholy about impermanence, while servants keep the lanterns trimmed. Tonight, the pavilion holds only its shadow and the smell of cut grass, and does its work anyway, framing the moon for nobody, perfectly. An old gardener sleeps in the cottage by the inner gate, a man who has spent 50 years persuading pines to lean as if by accident, whose life's masterpieces will not reach their best for another century, and who sleeps, they say, more soundly than his lord, the sleep of a man whose work cannot be hurried by anyone, including himself. Cross back over the wall's shadow to the lane, the whistle of the masseur streets away, the talk of the deer scarer behind us keeping the garden's time. Every corner of this city, it turns out, has its own small clock of wood and water, and all of them agree tonight, and all of them say, not yet, sleep on. One lamp in the high city is still burning. You can see it from the lane, a patient gold square in the dark bulk of a lord's barracks, and behind it sits one of the loneliest and most ordinary figures in Edo, a provincial samurai, far from home, writing a letter. He came with his lord's procession in the spring, 20 days on the great highway, over the passes, sea glimpses and post towns and pack horses, and he will not see his province again until next year's rotation. By day he has duties, escort, paperwork, guard rotations, the ceremonious tedium of a great household. By night he has a barrack cell, a brazier, and the knowledge that everyone he loves is 300 miles up the coast road. So he writes. Half the paper in Edo, it sometimes seems, is being used at any moment by homesick provincial men writing north and west and south, to wives running the farm and the family accounts alone, to mothers, to brothers, to sons whose height they are losing track of. His brush moves down the page. The great cursive script blooms and hooks. He pauses to trim the lamp, reads back what he has, and as letter writers must in his position, crosses out something too sad and replaces it with the price of rice. The city is well built for his loneliness and knows it. The letters go by the express couriers, relay runners, boxes on poles, who make the run to the far provinces in a handful of days, passing the sleeping post towns at a lope, lanterns swinging at the pole's tip. There are shops near every barrack selling paper cut for letters home and brushes, and the small famous local things a man folds in with them: pressed cherry petals in spring, a printed picture of a Sumida firework, a paper charm from Asakusa for a child's cough. Whole industries of missing people, and the letters that come back read them over his shoulder some other night, and you would find the same sentences flowing south that flowed home from the frigate at sea. The barley is in, your father's knee mends, the persimmon tree you planted bore 9 fruit this year, the boy grows and asks for you. Do not spend your rice money on gifts, and come home in one piece to us all. The words vary by ocean and by language. They never vary in what they hold. He seals the letter, addresses it in careful script, sets it by his sword for the morning, and puts out the lamp at last, the last civilian light in the high city, gone. Now the barrack sleeps like the row house, like the boat quarter, like the temple dormitory. Now the city is complete in its dark. 300 miles north, in a farmhouse he can walk through with his eyes shut, his letter of a month ago sits folded in a work basket, softened at the creases, read like sailors' letters everywhere, many more times than once. Our night is a summer night, crickets, mosquito nets, the shower on warm tiles. But the watchman walking beside us the last few streets would want you to know his other nights too. A city keeps a wardrobe of them. In autumn the nets come down and the air goes glass clear. The insects change orchestras. The bell crickets ring in the grasses along the canals, prized so dearly that they are sold in tiny cages for the bedside, a chirp by the pillow all night. The moon of the 8th month is the year's great one, moon-viewing dumplings on the veranda, pampas grass in a vase, the whole city looking up on the appointed night. The first cold snap smells of roasting sweet potatoes from the vendors' carts, autumn's answer to the sober man, and the watchman's cry sharpens a little in the crisping air. In winter, Edo sleeps buried and ingenious. The brazier moves to the center of family life, and over its embers goes the low quilted table, the whole family's legs beneath one vast coverlet, grandmother knee to knee with the cat, which is the true parliament of any Edo household from the 11th month on. Bodies sleep curled under mountains of quilts, nightcaps on, while the water freezes in the basin. And on mornings after snow, the city wakes to run and look. Snow viewing is a pastime as formal as moon viewing, at the boats wearing white hats and the vermilion shrine gates trimmed in ermine. The watchman's clappers on a snow night sound different, muffled, close, private, and his cry hangs in little clouds of breath. Fire fear runs highest in these months, the dry wind season. His rounds double, and the city loves him best in January. In spring, the city goes slightly, officially mad for a fortnight. The cherries bloom. The riverbanks and temple hills planted with them turn to weather, pink weather, and Edo picnics under the falling petals by lantern light, drinking and singing well past the 4-hour bell, gates kept open late by neighborhood consensus, the one annual amnesty everyone, including the gatekeepers, approves. Petals in the canals for a week, petals in the sake cups, which is held to improve the sake. Then the green rush of early summer, the plum rains, the first firefly, and the year comes round again to a warm night exactly like this one, with the tide moving under the bridges and a mosquito net glowing faintly green around a family, and someone somewhere always awake with a lantern, minding the fires. 100 years of nights like these, stacked quietly one on another, that is what this city is. Nothing about tonight is special, that is the entire point of it. The bells will do it all again tomorrow, and now the east truly is paling, and we have one appointment left to keep back through the lanes, under the dripping eaves, past the tofu maker's glowing shutters, home to the row house and the net and the futon and the dawn bell. Before the night ends, give the water its due, because Edo, like the frigate we sailed on another night, is a vessel and floats. The city stands on a river delta, and it is stitched together by more than 100 bridges and veined with canals the way a leaf is veined. The canals were dug first, and the city grew along them. Every warehouse district turns its front door to the water. Whole neighborhoods do their marketing, their commuting, their courting and their funerals by boat. By day the waterways are streets, barges of rice and timber and roof tile, ferries shuttling bank to bank, peddlers sculling produce right up to kitchen doors at the water stairs. The boatmen are a nation of their own, with their own slang, their own songs, their own saints, and opinions about everyone who lives on land. At this hour the water streets are empty as the earthen ones, but they are never still. The tide is the canal's night watchman. It walks through them twice while the city sleeps, swinging every moored hull to face upstream, and then, hours later, gently back, thousands of boats turning together in the dark like sleepers rolling over, mooring ropes creaking in one long soft chorus. The water carries the moon up under the bridges and lays it against the stone steps of the landings. Fish rise in the warehouse reaches where the day's spilled rice went down. The bridges are the city's night galleries. Each has its own name and fame and superstition. The bridge you cross for luck before an examination. The bridge where fishermen swear the tide talks. The great bridge at the city's heart, from which all distances in Japan are measured, so that every road in the empire, wherever it wanders, is counted as beginning at that one wooden crown a mile from where we stand. Under the bridges live the night herons that give one of Edo's oldest place names, hunched grey philosophers spaced along the pilings, motionless above their own reflections, fishing with a patience that shames even the gardener. A city of water is a city that cannot burn all at once. The canals were dug as fire breaks as much as roads, and a city that is never entirely silent because water is always saying something, even at the bottom of the night, against the stairs, around the pilings, along the hulls. The people who live within earshot of it say they cannot sleep away from it, and when they travel inland, they lie awake, uneasy, missing the sound of their street. Listen once more from the middle of the lane. There it is, under the crickets, the whole vast, quiet system of it, tide and hull and piling, the city breathing through its water. Then let it fade behind us. There are 2 small rooms left to visit before your futon, a schoolroom and a workshop full of pictures. The schoolroom first, because you passed it without knowing, 2 doors down from the row house, an ordinary dwelling where every morning 20 children of the neighborhood kneel at low desks and learn their letters. It is called a tarakoya, a temple school, from the days when monks did the teaching, but by our night it is simply the local school, kept by whoever in the lane is learned and patient enough. A retired clerk, a scholarly widow, a samurai down on his luck and up on his classics. Edo's children, and this would astonish a visiting European, very largely go to school. Boys and girls both, the fishmonger's daughter beside the carpenter's son, paying in coppers or vegetables or a bundle of firewood in the cold months. They learn their letters by copying brush, ink, the teacher's beautiful models, page after patient page, and they learn their numbers on the abacus, whose clicking in 20 small hands sounds like rain on the roof. By the time they take over the shop or the boat or the vegetable stall, they will read, write and reckon, and the letters and account books and cheap printed stories flowing through this city every day are the proof. 1 million people, and most of them can read the noodle man's lantern. It is one of the quietest remarkable facts about the place. The schoolroom sleeps now, brushes washed and racked, the teacher's model sheets weighted flat with river stones. The pupils sleep too, scattered down the lane behind their family shutters, and they had, be assured, a full evening first. Edo children own the lanes at dusk, kites off the embankment till the light fails, tops on the packed earth by the gate, hide and seek among the drying poles, the chanting circle games whose words are so old nobody knows what half of them mean, the girls' tamari balls, wound bright with silk thread, bouncing to counting songs. Summer gave them fireflies in jars and cicadas hunted with poles of birdlime. The festival gave them goldfish scooped in paper nets, carried home in trembling bowls of water and pride. And then the mosquito net, and a grandmother, and the last negotiation of every childhood in every century, one more story. She tells the old ones, Peach Boy, born from the peach that came bobbing down the river, to the old childless couple, the bamboo princess, found glowing in a bamboo stalk, who was loved by emperors and went home at last to the moon, the sparrow whose tongue was cut, and the kind old man who chose the small basket, the fox who repaid a debt. Stories with rivers and moons and kindness rewarded the furniture of a million small dreams tonight. The one more story ends. The small breathing joins the house's larger breathing. On the wall above the sleeping children, pinned at a child's eye height, is a woodblock print of a famous actor scowling magnificently, bought for a copper at the shop we are about to visit. The last stop of our night. At the corner where the lane meets the avenue stands a shop front that, by day, is one of the brightest places in the low city. A print shop, its racks and strings hung solid with pictures. Actors in mid-scowl, beauties in this month's fashions, wrestlers, famous views, ghost scenes for summer, snow scenes for winter, all inked in colors like a spilled jewel box, and none of it costing much more than a bowl of noodles. This is where Edo buys its pictures, and Edo buys pictures the way other cities buy bread. They are prints of the floating world, ukiyo-e, and the world they float over is exactly the one we have walked tonight. These bridges, these fireworks, this rain on these rooftops, the noodle lantern, the ferryman, the fire tower against the moon. The city looks at pictures of itself, dressed a little better than life, and is pleased the way this whole culture is pleased by the passing moment, caught mid-pass. But the shop is the end of the story. Come around behind it, up the alley, to the shuttered workshop where the pictures are actually made, because the making, asleep in the dark in there, is a small city in itself. No print is one person's work. The artist draws the design in brush line. The engraver bent all day over mountain cherrywood blocks, one block for each color, cutting away everything the color does not touch, turns the drawing into wood. The printer inks each block in turn, lays the paper, and rubs the back with a flat coil pad, sheet after sheet, color falling on color in registration so exact you could not slide a hair between them. And the publisher, who commissioned the lot and gambles on the public's taste, sells the result off those bright strings out front. 4 trades to make one picture that sells for coppers, and the picture, though nobody in that workshop would believe you, will hang one day in the palaces of Europe and change the way the world's painters see. Tonight the blocks sleep in their racks, smelling of cherrywood and paste. The brushes stand washed in their jars. A finished edition lies stacked and squared under a weight 200 identical summer evenings, 200 identical moons over the same printed bridge, waiting for daylight and their 200 separate futures. A child's wall, a clerk's ceiling, a letter north, folded around loneliness to show a farmhouse what the fireworks looked like. Of all the sleeping workshops in this city, this is the one that will carry the night we have just walked farthest clear out of its century and around the earth. The lanes, the lanterns, the rain, the watchmen, all of it is in those blocks cut in cherrywood, fast asleep. Ease the alley gate shut. The east, you will notice, has begun very faintly to change its mind about the dark. Our night is folding up its lanterns 1 hour and 1 bell. Remain, the sober man's lantern deserves one more chapter before dawn, because he is not alone in his trade. He is the night shift of the greatest street food city the world has yet seen. Edo is a city of single men laborers, apprentices, clerks, provincial samurai, all far from their mothers' kitchens, and the city answered them with food on every corner. Cheap, fast, hot and superb. The daytime avenues are lined with stalls the size of a wardrobe, each perfecting exactly one thing. And the astonishment for us is what those things are. At the fish market end of the bridge, a stall sells hand-pressed fingers of vinegared rice, topped with slices of the morning's catch cut to order, eaten standing, 2 bites each, invented here as workman's fast food, and destined, though the stall-keeper would laugh at you, to become the most famous luxury the world eats. Next to him, a man fries prawns and white fish in batter, fished golden from the oil while you wait cooking, that moved outdoors to the stalls because frying in oil indoors, in this city of wood, made the fire wardens weep, the flickering forbidden art perfected in exile on the riverbank. Down the row, eels split and grilled over charcoal, glazed dark and sweet, the smoke of them famously the best advertisement in Edo shops need no signboard. The wind does the work. Dumplings on skewers, broiled tofu with miso, sweet potato roasters trundling their stoves, and tea stalls everywhere, a copper a cup, with a bench, a kettle, and a proprietress who has heard everything twice. The connoisseurship is ferocious and completely democratic. Porters argue rankings of eel shops with the passion scholars save for the classics. Broadsheets print league tables of restaurants laid out like the sumo rankings. A stall that slips is abandoned in a week, and everyone from the palanquin bearer to the Lord Steward knows precisely where the best grilled squid on the East Bank is to be had, and at what hour, and from which side of the brazier. All of it sleeps now, the vats scoured, the skewers bundled, the master of the eel shop dreaming one hopes of smoke. What remains awake of the whole roaring daytime feast is one lantern and one flute. Somewhere across the quarter, the sober man, keeper of the flame, 16 coppers the bowl, the entire genius of Edo cooking distilled to its night watch. When the fires wake at dawn, the city will begin again the serious business of eating well while standing up. No city has ever done it better. Very few have ever done anything better. Every city is also its roads, and at the edge of Edo, where the last row houses give way to paddy and pine, the greatest road in Japan lies empty in the moonlight, running west. It is the coastal highway, the Tokaido, 300 miles of packed earth and stone paving, pine-shaded, mile-posted, that ties Edo to the emperor's ancient capital. 53 post stations along it, each a small town of inns and stables and porters. And along it by day flows everything. The Lord's processions in their thousands with spears and lacquered chests, pilgrims in white, merchants, couriers, players, pack-horse trains, honeymooners of a sort, for the great pilgrimage to the sun goddess's shrine is the one journey nearly everyone in Japan is permitted, and half of Japan seems to be either going or coming back. By night the road performs the same trick as the city. It closes. Travel after dark is forbidden at the barriers. The checkpoint gates along the route bar their doors at sunset, so as dusk falls, the whole moving nation of the road pours itself into the post towns like water-finding basins. Tonight, up and down 300 miles, the inns are full. Straw sandals drying in ranks by doorways, pack saddles stacked in yards, travelers asleep 20 to a room under communal quilts, feet toward the brazier, heads full of tomorrow's mountains. Inmaids bank fires, grooms walk a lame horse in a snowless yard. A late official's palanquin, privileged to travel after hours, sways past the shuttered fronts behind its bobbing lanterns, bearers breathing in unison, and is gone. And between the sleeping towns, the road itself, utterly empty, silver under the moon, its great pines throwing black stripes across it for mile after mile after mile. The mileposts stand their little watches. A fox crosses at a trot, glances both ways out of ancient habit, though nothing has passed for hours. At the ferry crossings, the boats are drawn up and chained, the rivers running dark and businesslike beneath. At the barrier gates, the guards sleep beside their registers, and the road on either side of the bar lies like a held breath. Walk out a little way past the last houses and stand on it on the westward road at night, the whole length of Japan lying quiet ahead. Somewhere down that silver line are the 53 towns, and the passes and the plains, and at the end the old capital with its own bells telling this same hour to its own sleepers. The courier who left the city gate at dusk is already 3 towns down it, running low and steady through the pines, his box swaying at his pole, his lantern making one small travelling star in 300 dark miles. Then come back in through the lanes, where the fires and the futons are. The road will still be running west in the morning. Roads are patient even by the standards of this city. One more thing to understand before we sleep, the thing that everything else tonight has rested on, quiet as a foundation stone. In Edo, nobody is alone. The lane we keep returning to, the well, the gate, the row house is not an address, it is a membership. The families of a back lane share a well, a rubbish heap, a privy, a guardian shrine the size of a doghouse, and a collective reputation, and they share, whether they chose each other or not, a life. The landlord's agent, every lane has one, a formidable institution, half rent collector and half village headman, knows every household's business and is officially answerable for their conduct, their contracts witnessed, their disputes soothed, their errant sons lectured, their festival contributions collected. Above him, the block officials and the neighborhood groups of 5 households that answer for one another by law, a city of 1 million, governed at the bottom, quite successfully, by the fact that everyone is somebody's neighbor. On paper, it is surveillance. In practice, at street level, it is the reason a widow in a back room does not starve. The lane simply does not permit it. A rice paper screen of gifts and errands and borrowed miso surrounds every household's hard month. The carpenter's wife watches the dyer's children as a matter of course. The old man who once taught in the schoolroom is fed by rotation, informally, invisibly, forever. When the porter at number 6 broke his leg in the spring, the lane's men took turns carrying his loads before anyone thought to call it a decision. The word for it is not charity. Nobody here would use so grand a word. It is only the lane. Its parliament is the wellside in the morning and the bathhouse at night. Its festivals are its treasury of joy, saved for all year, the lane's own shrine festival above all, when its ordinary alley becomes, for 2 days, the center of the universe, with its own portable shrine bucking and glittering on the shoulders of its own young men, and the old people out on stools with tea, watching the world they built go dancing past. And at this hour, its whole commonwealth is asleep behind one row of shutters, the carpenter, the dyer's children, the widow, the formidable agent, the mended porter, a dozen households breathing within earshot of one another, safer for the company, like the hammocks of the ship, like sleepers everywhere who have someone left on watch. The fox crosses the lane's end, going home. The first tofu smell is in the air, and the last of the dark is standing over the city on tiptoe, ready to leave without waking anyone. The watchman's last round talk, in the tiger hour, turns wistful to the pleasures a working man saves his coppers for, and in Edo, those are 2 above all, the theatre and the wrestling. The theatre district wakes earlier than the fish market. By law, the kabuki must finish by dusk, so it begins at dawn, and its devotees rise in the dark, in their best clothes, carrying picnic boxes for a performance that will last the entire day. And what a day! The great painted stage, the runway through the audience, so the actors enter through a sea of their admirers, trapdoors and revolves and snowstorms of paper, heroes striking poses like thunderclaps, while the whole house roars their names, for the actors of Edo are the most famous human beings in the city, more recognized than any lord, their faces printed and sold on every corner, their mannerisms copied by apprentice boys in every lane. The audience eats, weeps, shouts advice to characters in peril, naps honestly in the slow third act, and goes home at dusk, wrung out and satisfied in a way only 11 hours of tragedy can produce. Our watchman has been 4 times in his life. He can perform, and on quiet rounds occasionally does perform, the death scene from each visit. The wrestling is holier and briefer and louder. Tournament season fills a temple yard with a drum tower, banners, and a roaring bowl of humanity around one small ring of packed clay. The wrestlers' mountains, who have somehow agreed to be men, are ranked on printed lists, studied in every bathhouse. Their bouts, after ceremonies of salt and stamping that stretch the nerves like rope, are decided in seconds, and the roar when a favorite throws a giant can be heard, they claim, across the river. The victor of the autumn tournament could not buy his own supper in this city if he tried, though he is in no danger of trying, since 3 eel shops are contending for the honor. Theatre and ring both sleep now, the great drum silent in its tower, the painted faces washed, the banners furled. But they are half of why the lanes sleep so contentedly around us. A city that plays this hard, this communally, ends its days emptied out in the best way. The porter who roared himself hoarse at the spring tournament sleeps tonight like the very clay of the ring. Joy, well spent, is the deepest pillow there is. But no account of what this city knows about rest would be complete with only its noise. Edo's true genius, the thing under everything we have walked tonight, is its cultivation of small stillness, whole disciplined arts, whose entire object is a quiet mind. Somewhere behind these walls tonight sleeps a tea master, whose life's work is a room 2 mats wide, and the sequence of unhurried motions by which a bowl of tea is made and offered in it. Everything unnecessary has been removed from that room, over 400 years of subtraction. What remains is warm water, steam, the smell of the whisked green tea, 1 scroll, 1 flower, and attention itself, distilled and served warm. Great lords wait their turn at his door. What they are buying, though the etiquette forbids saying so, is 15 minutes inside a quiet mind. Somewhere else sleeps an incense master, keeper of an art stranger still, the appreciation in silence of scent rare woods warmed grain by grain over a coal, passed hand to hand, the guests listening to the incense, as the tradition beautifully insists on saying, never merely smelling it. And in 1,000 ordinary alcoves, on 1,000 humbler shelves, the incense burns down by the sleeping households as it burned by the bell-keeper's mark. Time itself, in this city, made fragrant and calm. And on the verandas and shop ledges of every lane in the low city, this is the detail to carry into sleep, stand the pots. Morning glories trained up strings for the dawn, chrysanthemums nursed toward autumn glory, and the little trees, the pines and maples grown patient and ancient in trays, forests 2 hands high, tended by porters and fishmongers, with the same fingertip care the Lord's gardener spends on his lake. A man who carries loads all day comes home and waters a 60-year-old tree the size of a cat, prunes 1 needle, and stands looking at it in the dusk with his hands on his hips, entirely at rest. His grandfather tended it, his grandson will. It is the daimyo's garden, the moon pavilion, the whole art of stillness, scaled to a windowsill and a working wage, and it works. It all works. That is the finding of our night's long walk. 1 million people in the largest city on earth have built themselves 10,000 small machines for being calm, and every one of them is running quietly in the dark around us. Tea bowl, incense, tree in a tray, bell, lantern, futon, net. The east is turning pearl. The last watch is walked. Everything after this is morning's business, and we, at long last, are none of ours. There is an hour before dawn when night is technically still in charge, but has visibly begun packing to leave. In Edo, that is the hour of the tiger, and it belongs to a small, hard-working caste who move through the sleeping city like stagehands before the curtain. First come the collectors, the night soil men, with their buckets slung on poles, making their unglamorous, indispensable rounds. Say what you like, this city of 1,000,000 is clean, its canals are not sewers, and the reason is these men, who buy the city's waste, buy it for cash or vegetables, and pole it upriver to the farm villages, where it becomes the fertilizer that grows the greens that come back down the same river to the morning markets. Edo wastes nothing. The city and its farmland breathe in and out through these pre-dawn boats like a single organism, and the whole arrangement is so sensible that European visitors, when they eventually see it, will not know whether to be scandalized or take notes. Then the water sellers at the wells, filling their first buckets while the winch ropes creak in the half-dark. The tofu makers, whose day starts earliest of all honest trades, their workshop shutters glowing and the smell of fresh soy milk drifting into the lane, the first new smell of the new day. The fish brokers, walking fast toward the riverside market, where the night boats are already unloading by torchlight. Bonito if the season is kind, and the first bonito of summer is a madness this city gladly pays a month's wages for. Bakers of sweet potato snacks lighting ovens, palanquin bearers stretching at their stands, apprentice boys sent out yawning to open shutters, moving down the lanes like a slow tide of reluctance. The Kido gates are unbarred at first light, the gatekeeper's last official act before their unofficial first nap. The fire watchman finishes his final round and racks his clappers by the gatehouse door. Another night of nothing to report, added to a lifetime's proud collection. Up on the fire tower, the watcher sees what only he and the boatman ever see. The sky over the bay, going from indigo to iron, to the color of the inside of a shell, and Mount Fuji, far to the west, catching the first light on its snow, while the whole city below is still in shadow, a private daily astonishment he long ago stopped mentioning at home, having no words for it that did not sound like boasting. And in the row house, inside the green gauze net, the grandmother wakes first, as grandmothers do, lies still a moment, counting the household's breathing around her, and slips out to wake the fire she buried in the ash last night. A breath, a glow, a curl of smoke, yesterday's flame, alive again. The first cooking fire in the lane. Within the half hour there will be 10,000. The east is pale now behind the fire towers. The great bell monk climbs his steps one last time. Come back to your own futon before the bell sleepers should be lying down at dawn, and you have a bell of your own to hear. Lie back down inside the net, where the futon has kept your warmth. The room is still dark. The andon has burned down to the faintest breath of gold behind its paper. Through the walls, the earliest sounds of the world resuming are beginning a shutter far off. A well rope, a first sparrow trying a note on the eave and thinking better of it, but they are on the far side of the gauze, and the gauze, as every child in this city knows, keeps everything out except sleep. You have walked the whole night through, and the night is nearly done, and nothing is required of you any longer. That is the last and best fact of the hour. The watchman has racked his clappers, the gates stand open, the fires are waking in their stoves, watched by their families. The city has handed the watch back to the day, and every duty in it belongs to someone else. Listen one more time, the bell, the dawn bell, from across the rooftops, the deep bronze note blooming and rolling out over the lanes, over the boats turning on the tide, over the warehouses and the foxes going home along the walls, softening as it comes, roof by roof, until it reaches this room as hardly more than a warmth in the air. 6 strokes, slower than a sleeper's breathing, with all the time in the world between them. All things pass, says the bell, very gently. The night has passed. That is all it ever says, and it has never once been wrong, and the city has slept against that promise for 100 years. The mosquito net sways just perceptibly in the first stir of morning air, the walls of your soft green world breathing with you. The buckwheat pillow is cool against your cheek. Somewhere streets away, a tofu seller's small bell chimes, walking further off with every chime, like something kind retreating into a dream. Let the city wake without you. It knows how. 1,000,000 people are rising to mind the shop and light the fires and shout the first prices of bonito, and every one of them would tell you, smiling, that the finest thing in Edo at the hour of the rabbit is a person with nowhere to be, asleep behind a paper screen in the first pale gold of the morning. The bell fades. The sparrow decides against singing after all. Sleep now.